The crystalline halls of the Zithurian Imperial Palace shimmered with bioluminescent patterns as Burek stood at attention. His human military uniform a stark contrast to the flowing, iridescent robes of the alien dignitaries surrounding him. He had been part of the Earth delegation for 6 months now, ever since humanity had joined the Galactic Consortium, and every single day had been a carefully orchestrated dance of diplomacy and restraint. Princess Melissa of Zathara was the reason for his caution. She glided through the corridor toward him, her forearms moving with practiced grace, her silver skin catching the light like moonbeams on water, her large, violet eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangular pattern on her elegant face, fixed upon him with an intensity that made his heart race for reasons that terrified him. "Captain Burok," she called out, her voice carrying that melodic, multi-toned quality unique to her species. "Once again, you flee from my presence." He straightened, keeping his expression neutral. "Your Highness, I have duties to attend to, duties that conveniently arise whenever I approach." She moved closer, and he caught the faint scent of ozone and lavender that seemed to follow her. "For months, I have observed your behavior. You speak freely with Ambassador Torvak. You share meals with Commander Xylix, yet when I enter a room, you find the nearest exit." Baroque felt the weight of her gaze. Around them, other aliens paused in their movements, sensing the confrontation. The Zithurian guards, towering beings with chitinous armor, watched with interest. This was dangerous territory. "I mean no disrespect, Your Highness." "Then explain." She crossed 2 of her arms, while the other 2 hung at her sides. "My father believes you harbor prejudice against our kind. My advisors suggest you find Zithurians repulsive. I wish to know the truth." The truth? How could he possibly explain the truth? Burok took a deep breath, his mind racing through the diplomatic training he'd received. But something in her voice, a genuine hurt beneath the imperial authority, made him reconsider his practiced evasions. Perhaps honesty was the only path forward. Consequences be damned. "Your Highness, may we speak privately?" Melissa's eyes widened slightly, surprise evident in the shifting colors of her skin. "Very well." She gestured to a nearby chamber, and they entered, the door sealing behind them with a soft hiss. The room was smaller, more intimate, filled with the strange furniture that accommodated Zithurian physiology. Melissa settled onto a floating platform, arranging her robes, while Burek remained standing. "Speak, Captain." He met her gaze, all 3. Izand felt his resolve waver, but he'd committed now. "I avoid you, Princess, because you are the most dangerous being I have encountered in this entire galaxy." Her skin flushed deep purple, a color he'd learned indicated offense. "Dangerous? I, who have advocated for humanity's inclusion in the consortium. I, who convinced my father to establish trade agreements with Earth. You dare, please, let me finish." His voice was quiet but firm. "You're dangerous because of what you make me feel." The color in her skin shifted, purple fading to a confused silver blue. Burek continued, the words now flowing freely. "In my culture, we have a concept: propriety, boundaries. I am a military officer, a representative of my species. You are royalty, a princess of an empire that spans 12 star systems. There are protocols, expectations, political ramifications for any impropriety. I do not understand what impropriety. I avoid you because every time you enter a room, I forget those protocols," Burok said, his voice dropping. "I forget that I'm supposed to maintain professional distance. I forget the careful diplomatic language I'm supposed to use. When you speak, I find myself hanging on every word, not as a representative of Earth, but as just Burok." Melissa's skin began to shimmer with patterns of gold and silver, colors he hadn't seen before. "When you smile, that expression you learned from studying human customs. My concentration shatters," he continued. "When you asked me to teach you about Earth literature last month, I wanted nothing more than to spend hours with you, sharing everything about my world. But I couldn't, because I knew that if I allowed myself that freedom, I would cross lines that cannot be uncrossed." He moved closer, his human height bringing him nearly eye level with her seated form. "You're dangerous, Princess, because you make me want to forget that I'm Captain Burok of the Earth Defense Force. You make me want to be just a man, speaking with a woman he finds extraordinary, and I cannot afford that want. Not when my actions could affect diplomatic relations between our peoples. Not when my feelings could be seen as manipulation or insult to your station." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Melissa's skin continued its golden shimmer, and her 3 eyes held an expression that seemed almost vulnerable. "You believe your feelings would insult me?" she finally asked, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "I believe they would complicate everything." For both of us. She rose from the platform, her forearms unfolding as she approached him. Captain Baroque, do you know why I have been studying human customs so intently? Why I requested your presence at state functions? Why I have arranged for our paths to cross with such frequency? He shook his head, not trusting his voice. Because I too have been observing protocols that weigh heavily upon me, she said. In Zetherian culture, it is the female who must initiate courtship, but I was uncertain if human customs would view my interest as appropriate. Your species is new to the consortium. I feared my attention would be unwelcome, that you would see me as alien, as other. Baroque felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. You've been trying to court me, unsuccessfully, it seems. A ripple of color crossed her skin, something that looked almost like a blush. I mistook your avoidance for rejection. I thought perhaps humans found our appearance disturbing, despite your people's assurances otherwise. Disturbing. The word came out as half laugh, half disbelief. Princess, you are the most beautiful being I've ever encountered. Your people move like living art. And you, he caught himself. But she stepped closer. Continue, she urged. You are grace and intelligence and curiosity personified. You switched to learning Mandarin when you discovered it was my first language. You asked about my mother's recipes. You inquired about Earth's oceans because I mentioned missing them. How could I not? He stopped himself again, the weight of propriety still pressing down on him. Not what? Her voice was barely a whisper now. How could I not fall for you? The confession hung in the air between them. But I am a captain. You are a princess. There are rules, regulations, expectations from both our peoples. Melissa's forearms moved, two of them reaching out to gently take his hands. The touch sent electricity through him. Then perhaps, she said, her golden shimmer intensifying, it is time we wrote new rules, together. In that moment, with her hands in his and the barriers between them finally crumbling, Baroque understood the true meaning of humanity's place in the galaxy. They were not just survivors or warriors or diplomats. They were bridges. They were the species that dared to connect, to feel, to love across the vast distances between stars. Your Highness Melissa, she corrected. When we are alone, please call me Melissa. He smiled, feeling lighter than he had in months. Melissa then, and I'm just Baroque, she repeated, her melodic voice wrapping around his name like a song. The human who avoided me because he cared too much, not too little. How very human of you. Is that a compliment? The highest I can give. Her skin shimmered with joy. My father will need to be convinced. The council will have concerns. But I am not afraid of complications. Baroque, are you? He thought of Earth, of humanity's long history of breaking barriers and defying expectations. He thought of every human who had ever dared to reach across differences and find connection. No, he said finally, squeezing her hands gently. I'm not afraid, not anymore. Outside the chamber, the galaxy continued its ancient dance, but inside, two beings from different worlds had found something the consortium had never quite expected from humanity, the courage to follow their hearts across the stars. Protocol and propriety be damned, and in that courage, in that very human defiance of convenient boundaries, lay the seed of something far greater than diplomacy, hope, the end.